Good morning and welcome to this episode number 7 of the RDO Podcast. As always, I'm your host, Jason Von Cannell. This is my co-host, my brother, Alex Von Cannell. How are you this morning, brother?
I'm good.
And this week we are joined by a very special guest, which I will grab for you. Nady boy. Nady boy. So this is my son, Nate, who is 2 days off being 8 months old, and he's the cutest guy on the planet, and he's largely going to be what this podcast is about, because we're going to go down the pathway of talking about some fatherhood stuff. Oh. You don't like being on TV, huh? Okay, alright, that's enough of you. Mwah. See you, little boy. Bye, everyone.
Bye, Nate.
Cool.
So what we're going to do this time is, so you've given me a little interview to ask about sort of business stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought we should reverse roles,
Mm-hmm.
and I might ask you a couple of questions about fatherhood and about the contrast between fatherhood and work life.
Okay.
Now, my memory is not as good as yours,
Right.
so I've written mine down.
Fair enough. You got some
because-
notes.
Yeah, because I do forget things and I have the potential to go rogue.
And as we spoke about last week, prepreration.
Preparation
Preparation, very important.
I'm prepared. So the first question I had is, I want to know what was the hangover from work like? So going from working 60 odd hours a week to stay-at-home fatherhood, what did that look like?
So, like, what is it today? It's the 24th of September. So it's been almost 2 months now since I've been off. And it's one of those weird things which a lot of people in the motor trade would know about, where, for 10 years, I ran my life 1 month at a time. And it was always just about the month. Because I was pretty obsessive with work, which a lot of people in this industry are, because you kind of have to be, highly motivated, highly successful, and so you're just constantly thinking about, all right, so, 1 day at a time, 1 week at a time, but 1 month at a time. And that was probably the first part that was a little bit different to sort of get my head around, which was no longer was I chasing something, right? Like I'm not chasing a target every single day. So I think there probably was a bit of a hangover where for like the first week or two is like, your stress levels are still sort of a little bit elevated.
In anticipation of something.
Yeah. Where it probably took me 2 to 3 weeks before I really went, oh, this isn't a holiday. Like I'm actually not going back to work at this point. Like, because normally, if I did take leave, like the longest holiday I've ever taken in the last 10 years was a month, which was 4 years ago we did that holiday. Apart from that, it's like 1 to 2 weeks at a time. So you always sort of found when I take leave beforehand that you would have, it would take you 11 days to wind down, and then after 14 days you're back at work.
Yeah.
So that was probably something. Like I guess that's the main thing. It probably took took me that long to sort of de-stress a little bit.
And what was the biggest surprise? What was like the biggest thing that you thought you prepared for, and what was surprising about
Fatherhood and
daddledom? Yeah.
Probably. So it's this funny thing, right? So if we go back to when Amanda was pregnant, and I was a pretty typical bloke when it comes to that, because there are a million baby books that you can read. There's all this research stuff that you need to do beforehand.
Yeah.
And Amanda read all the books and did all the things, and she's got a lot of friends who've had kids and stuff too, which is super handy. And I always kind of fobbed it off, going like, it'll come naturally to me. And
I can see why you'd think that. That's you tend to just think that things will come naturally to you in every sense.
Because
it's easy.
Well, I talk about the evolutionary things too. Cavemen have been doing this for long before the internet.
Yeah, but not well.
What do you mean not well?
Well, their life expectancy was like 20.
Yeah, and then they got us to a point where we're at today. It's all take steps, right? But like there's some natural
baby steps.
Actually, that's something else I'll comment on too. but you know, I do feel like there's a lot of it that does just come to you naturally. I had no experience with kids before having my own, so I didn't know what to expect or anything like that. I can still remember actually when when he was born. So I won't go into all the gory details, but essentially ended up in an emergency C-section. So the first time I ever saw him was I felt the bed shake because I was sitting behind the curtain with Amanda and felt the bed shake, and I sort of stepped up and looked up over the curtain, and then they just pulled him out, and you just see this life form like ripped from your wife's stomach.
Like a scene from Alien.
100%, man. 100%.
Like a xenomorph.
Yeah. And he's just there. And then anyway, so like they obviously sort of wrap him up and towel him off a little bit. Then they bring him over and they weigh him. Like it's one of the first things they do. So they put him on his scale. And I can remember just standing there looking at him on that scale and just thinking, should have read a book. What the fuck do I do now? Right? Like,
and childbirth sounds amazing. All right. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah. Oh, fuck. Anyone out there who has been through it, mad props to you ladies because it's full on.
Yeah.
But yeah, like I can still remember having that thought of like, holy shit, like what do I do now? But a lot of it does sort of come naturally. And that's probably the thing that I guess surprised me the most was that how much I've gone from having no kids and not really being the sort of guy who wants to be around kids a lot to now I've got my own. It's like dang you to switch gears, and it's probably how much I love it and I enjoy it is the thing that's really surprised me. You know, I even thought hangover from work that I was going to sort of miss the work environment of, you know, I've always been a pretty motivated guy who would, you know, chase goals and targets and whatever. And I thought I would miss that, but I don't.
Does that have anything to do with the fact that fatherhood's so intense? Like I would say it's much easier for me to get hold of you on the phone when you're working than it is when you're a dad.
Yeah.
So that's take your mind off it.
For sure, like it is way more intense than you think. Like, especially when I quit a couple months ago and I finished up, I had all these projects in mind I wanted to do, and I was thinking, sweet, now with all my extra time, I'm going to be able to get all this stuff done. It's not easy, because I've mentioned before about trying to do stuff around like nap cycles and stuff like that, and we're really glad that we put the work in to try to get these, you know, nap cycles down, because it's only now we realise how much easier life is now than it was, say, 3 months ago, before we put the work in, because now it's like you can put it down at 6:30, 7 o'clock at night and you'll sleep all the way through the morning.
Yeah.
You know, last couple of nights he's been up in the middle of the night 'cause he's teething and stuff like that, but apart from that he's really, really good. But yeah, so it is a lot more intense than you'd expect. I think, again, got to give mad props to the women who've been stay-at-home mumming it up forever. You know, they've always said, oh, it's like a full-time job, and all the blokes have all gone, oh, whatever, like, you know, I'm going to work, I'm bringing home the bacon. It's a full-time job, man.
Well, I would have guessed as much only because I've heard I've worked with a lot of the dads that have multiple children.
Right.
And, like, they make it very known that here is like work is a safer place to
easier.
be. Yeah, way easier.
Yeah, that's right. Because it's one of those things too when like every phase has its benefits and its cons. Like when they're first born, they're basically a blob. Now you have to feed them really regularly because they're not eating much at the time, and it's this whole, you know, they need to be putting on a certain amount of weight to be healthy and all that sort of stuff. So it's pretty round the clock, and like that's when you're getting up multiple times throughout the night just for feedings and stuff like that. Which, look, fortunately, Mum does most of that stuff. Yeah. But like there's that stage, but then, you know, so the feeding stuff's difficult, but they're relatively easy because they're just a blob and they sleep most of the time. And then when it's like, okay, so one thing gets a bit easier, like the feeding thing, because they get better at feeding, so they drink more milk each time, and if I have to feed less often, okay, that becomes easier. But now it's like, okay, they're awake more and they're trying to experience more things. Sure. Now we're at the level now, so Nate's 8 months old in a couple of days, where all of a sudden he can crawl. Yeah. And now he's into everything. Yeah. So I mentioned to you on the phone this morning. So he pulled open his first drawer this morning. Great achievement, eh? He also jammed his fingers in the drawer for the first time this morning as well. So now, like, the feeding stuff's super easy. He's actually starting to eat some solids and just feed himself a little bit now too, which is really cool, which makes feeding him even easier. But now you just have to watch him like a hawk because he can get around really quickly and he just wants to get into everything.
So the only difference between what you've sort of illustrated there and a Tamagotchi is if a Tamagotchi could move. So if you put a Tamagotchi on a Roomba, that is basically
a baby. Yeah,
a baby or a toddler.
Yeah, because Roombas do just go around the house bumping into stuff as well too.
So it's the same. It's the same.
Yeah.
The robot equivalent is a Tamagotchi.
Tamagotchi on a Roomba.
Yeah.
There's a product there. Roomba.
Tamaroomba?
Yeah.
Roomagotchi?
Roomagotchi. They could do a collab. Bring it back.
The collab is funny as the...
Actually,
a friend of mine spoke about how old is new again. Right. We're going back to the old ways. Mm-hmm. So he came up with the idea of a Roomba, but with a stick on the end that you can then push around, like a manualised...
a manual Roomba.
A manualised automatic vacuum cleaner.
Right. I was just thinking with the Roomagotchi is it would need to be a reverse cycle Roomba.
Oh, they're just
that
shit everywhere.
Mess everywhere as well. There's something.
There is something there.
Yeah.
Okay, so you being like a targety kind of guy, very motivated, where are some improvements that you can make in your dad game?
Look, I reckon there's heaps of stuff I can work on.
I think that's interesting how you just said that.
Why?
You said, I think there are some interesting things that I could work on.
Yeah.
Whereas I think an even more motivated person would have said, these are the things that I will work on.
Possibly.
Yeah. Interesting, don't they?
Yeah.
I don't know if you noticed at home. I noticed.
If you roll back the tape, you didn't get the word track completely right, but we'll leave that.
But the idea was the same.
So things I can work on. Let's take a step back. So at the beginning of having a baby, it's all mum. Mum's got to do all of it. So really, the best thing that you can do as a dad is you play support to the best you can. So playing support means making meals for mum. It means cleaning the house. It means changing nappies, doing bath time, stuff like that. Especially in the first couple of days because the recovery is pretty full on. So that's sort of what being a dad is like at the beginning, and obviously trying to do some skin to skin time and bonding time, all that sort of stuff. Now with him being 8 months into it, some things that I could work on. I think that he's at a stage now where he's learning very rapidly. So I'm not spending, I'll admit, I'm not spending enough time doing things like reading to him at the moment, which we do have some books and stuff like that, which I'm probably doing it every...
Can I recommend the book Atlas Shrugged?
By Anne Rand.
By Anne Rand.
Yeah, good read.
Good great read for an 8-month-old.
Yeah. Very, very relevant.
Yeah, absolutely.
So probably reading to him. I sing like songs with him and all that and that stuff, sort of stuff as well too, which he seems to like. We do a lot of playtime, that sort of thing there too. Me as a dad, probably some things that I can work on a bit more is. So you said before that I'm pretty focused and goal oriented, and one of the things that I've always pretended I could do, but I've realised I can't, is multitasking. So one of the issues is I'll want to dive into doing something, whether it's something around the house or whatever the case may be. And so maybe it's gardening, for example. So I've been getting stuck into the garden lately. And it's like, all right, so if I've got the sleep schedule going and then Nate goes down for his nap at midday and he's going to sleep for 2 hours, at that point in time I can get stuck into the garden. And then something minor might happen where he doesn't go to sleep straight away, and then I think it's going to be a bit of a disjointed sleep or something like that. Instead of me just going, okay, well, I can go and do 10 minutes in the garden, and that's good enough. oftentimes I just won't bother because I'll be like,
See, I think that's you process guys. You process people. That's how you guys operate. Is if it needs to be in a particular order, or it's not done at all.
Or it's kind of like all or nothing.
Yeah,
and that's probably the mentality I need to switch off a little bit.
More flippity flam me, flippity floppity flam bamboozly roomba gotchily. I could do a minute's worth of work on 10 things.
Right.
And sometimes I find it's to my own detriment. Like I'll walk to the kitchen and I'll think on the way, what things can I take to the kitchen here at the office.
Yeah.
While I put the kettle on, if I have to open my electric door, that takes longer. So maybe I'll just hit that first, walk to the kitchen, turn the kettle on.
You're always trying to think of the most efficient way to do things.
Yeah.
But sometimes by doing that and overthinking it, you end up either forgetting things or forgetting the original point of what you're doing in the first place.
Yeah, that's when you stand in the middle of the room going,
huh?
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Whereas like yesterday afternoon, for example, like Amanda took Nate to her mum's place just for a visit. So I knew I had a few out. So I'm like, boom, all right, sweet. I'm going to get stuck into the garden. So one of the things I'm mindful of, so my back lawn has bindies in it. And they're about to start. So bindies, everyone in Australia knows what bindies are, and they hurt when you step on them. And it's actually the seeds that are the spikes in the bindies. So you need to sort of get them out before they start seeding, because once they've seeded, you're stuffed, because those will, even if they die, the spikes are still sitting there in the ground. But they're starting to get pretty bad. So I'm thinking ahead now where I'm like, well, Nate's pretty much trying to start walking now. Like he just grabs everything and stands up. Like it won't be that much longer before he's actually walking around.
So it's obvious to get him to pull the bindies out.
Yeah, well, hey, that'll be his job down the track.
Yeah.
But like I had a 3-hour stint yesterday on the yard of just trying to, because I sprayed everything a week ago and then it rained the next day when it wasn't supposed to, so I stuffed that up too. But I'm like, I can't leave it any longer, so I just grabbed a little hand hoe and I've just been trying to pull all these bindies out individually. Did that for 3 hours yesterday.
Does that work though?
Well,
I heard something that you can grow a different type of grass. If you seed different grass, you can...
Yeah, that's probably the next level. There's that like Sir Walter grass, which we had
Blue cooch.
Blue cooch. This is the only grass name that you know?
Correct.
Yeah.
Buffalo. Did you say buffalo?
No, I said Sir Walter.
Oh, then we're only 3 then.
There you go.
Yeah.
We had
Surely there's not more than 3 types of grass. There's green and there's brown.
There's light grass and dead grass.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's one of those things where it's like, okay, I had a 3-hour block. Cool. I'm going to go out and I'm going to hit as hard as I possibly can because I had that moment in time. So getting back to your original question, things I can work on is letting go of there being the perfect opportunity to do something. Because there's never going to be the perfect opportunity to do anything anymore because something's going to come up.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's my answer.
Okay, and again, being target orientated, my question is, what is the metric of success for fatherhood?
Mm-hmm.
And I know that the end goal is very easy.
Mm-hmm.
Stays out of jail,
mm-hmm.
has, smart, articulate, right, I get those things. But what about short term? Like what are the little things?
So yeah, interesting question. Because
I know, mate, I wrote it.
So there's a lot of like apps and stuff that you can get which tell you at what level of development your baby's at and what the potential milestones are that they could be doing at that level of development. And it literally changes. At the beginning it's weekly and now it's like monthly. It's like, okay, so this month they should be exhibiting these sorts of behaviours. So look, one goal I guess is to look at those and go, out of those things, what is he doing, what is he not doing, and what can I potentially help him learn to do? And Nate, again, being that typical biased parent, he's been pretty advanced for most of these things that have come up anyway, so we haven't really had to worry about too many of them. But also you could easily get caught up in that and go, oh, he's not doing all this stuff, have a freak out and think that he's behind.
And that flows on to your child too.
100%, 100%. So you just got to chill. So I think realistically, one of the, and I said at the beginning, and I'm going to stop doing that, the metrics of success for parenthood is really what the metric of success for adulthood should be, which is to have a happy kid. Have a happy kid who is progressing, because we as human beings, we feel good when we progress. And it's one of the interesting things about him is that he'll learn a new thing. Like when he went from, all of a sudden he just hated lying on his back. So you'd be trying to feed him a bottle of milk, which you have to tip up, so you lie on his back to do it, and he hated it, and he'd be squirming and stuff like that, but he couldn't actually get himself up. Then when he could sit up on his own, loved it, absolutely loved it, for 2 days. Because now he's like, well, now I can sit up, but now I want to get around more. And then he works on the crawling thing, and now we can crawl everywhere, and he was so stoked for 2 days. Because now he's trying to grab everything and stand up, because he always wants to progress. So I think that as human beings, we have that built into ourselves, because we're, as babies, we're brought into a world where you're designed to take on your surroundings. So the first things that develop are their senses, so they can figure out, they can take that data in of what's around them, and then we're supposed to adapt to those surroundings. And obviously get better and better at what we do.
So I just wrote something down here because I didn't want to lose track of this. One thing that, and again, I'm not a dad, not a parent, but something that I know not everyone is doing that you did, which I found impressive, is actually looking for a progress scale, something to compare your child to. Now, then the second thing you said was that he's happy. Could those two things be at odds? Could your kid be happy because you're just playing all the time, and could you lose sight of the development side? And it's not all good to having a happy kid if your kid is not developing.
No,
But there's nothing wrong with, you'll feel good inside having a happy kid. But are you setting that kid up in the correct way?
Well, see, that's where it's interesting, right? Because from what I've seen in Nate is happiest when he's learning new things. And I don't know if all kids are like that, because like I said, I've got zero experience with kids. But he seems to be happiest when he picks up a new skill. Which means that maybe those two things are intertwined as well, right? So, I know full well, because I'm a sports guy, I can't wait until he's old enough for us to be able to throw a ball together, kick a ball together, start teaching him sports and all that sort of stuff there too. And I feel like him as a kid, he's a really happy kid. He's already super happy already. We just got lucky with that. He's a pretty chilled out, easy to deal with sort of kid, which maybe makes it easier for us to just, focus on a bit of development stuff. He seems to be relatively happy with whatever it is he's doing.
So you're not having to put effort into the entertainment side because he seems naturally happy.
Yeah, that's right. And they learn a lot from play and stuff like that too. So you sort of get to do both anyway. I think the biggest key to them though is the number one influence in their life is you. So we have a choice every single day as parents, which is I'm either interacting with him or I'm not. So if you're interacting with your kid, they are going to benefit from that exponentially than if you're not. That old school mentality from the 50s of, kids should speak when spoken to and, be seen and not heard and that sort of stuff. That's not cool. That's not going to, I don't think any kid was super happy in that sort of environment. So one of the things that, and again, it's probably something I'm trying to work on too, is it's that mentality change of all of a sudden, I am a goal-oriented guy, but my goals take a back seat to just playing with Nate, because he's going to benefit from that exponentially.
You just remind me of an interesting... I've had this conversation with a couple of my dad friends. There seems to be, we look at the past and think, we might look at our parents or our parents' parents or older generations, and you just made the comment of, in the 50s, seen, not heard. To a degree, that's how we were raised.
Yeah,
okay.
to a degree.
So,
why are we going to fall into a trap where like Nate's going to want for nothing? He's going to have everything. You and Amanda are smart, educated, financially you're doing great. He'll want for nothing. Yet, aren't most of the success stories people that
From struggle?
From struggle.
Mm.
Is there any consideration to the lack of struggle?
See, yeah, so that's a really, really interesting point. Because, look, we are, so financially wise, we are comfortable. I mean, like, I just quit my job, so I've got zero income. So that's a big blow, but we made some smart decisions that have allowed me to do that. And I'll have to get a job at some point or create an income at some point, which is more so what I'm looking at trying to do. I think it's really, really important to, I mean, we as adults, we need to understand that in life's actually really, really simple when you think about it. And this is a real thing in life. If something is good, it's typically bad for you. And if something is difficult, it's typically good for you. Example, exercise. Exercise is difficult to do if you don't want to do it.
Did you exercise today?
I did, actually. And I'm doing another session again tonight.
I did too.
I just went for a walk this morning, but we're doing an actual session tonight. But exercise is a perfect example. It's something that is difficult to do, and it's really easy not to do. But if you exercise regularly and you push yourself to do that difficult thing, your body works better, you feel better, and it gets easier to do. Whereas if you take the easy way out and you don't do those things all the time, your body works worse, everything in life becomes more difficult.
Yeah.
So, things that are good, sweets, eating lollies and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So good, right?
The best.
But kind of bad for you.
Very bad for you.
Something that's difficult, learning a new skill. Personal development. Those things are all difficult, but they're really good for you in the long run.
Critiquing yourself.
Critiquing
What is
yourself.
most people find it very difficult.
Look, yeah,
but it would be massively beneficial if more people
Well,
did it.
I wouldn't even say most people. Like, what's interesting about that is I think people fall into one or two categories. There are some people who find it extremely difficult and can't critique themselves at all because they just think they're killing it at everything in life. But then there's other people who are way too harsh on themselves. So I think you need to find that sort of balance.
Yeah, but the one that's harsh on themselves should realise that they're harsh on themselves by critiquing themselves and then push forward.
Yeah, but then I think a lot of them feel guilty for it as well because it's like they're falling down.
Maybe.
So I think, one of the things that I want to instill in Nate is that there is benefit to doing difficult things. And I mean, I think we sort of grew up with that as well too. Like our parents are both immigrants, so they came over here. There was no plan B. There's no, mum and dad to bail you out that you can move back into their house and things go pear-shaped. They just needed to make it happen. And we grew up seeing that. I think that's why we got the same mentality. So you're right. Nate is in a more privileged position from the beginning than we were when we were kids. I think the key is we need to be mindful of the fact that we need to push him in certain ways and extend him in certain ways. Because I do feel like there was that generation, probably the generation who are late teens to maybe even early 20s now. Millennials, yeah. Who maybe they were that first generation where all of a sudden the script was completely flipped. And instead of not being seen, not being heard, all they were seen and heard, and the parents were their slaves from an early age. And they grew up thinking that that's the way the world works, and it's not.
Funny you say that. So I've heard a lot of, mostly boomers, talk about how, it's just the downfall of humanity is having that scenario.
Mm-hmm.
But what I think makes humans so resilient is we'll always find a way.
That's right.
So once millennials haven't seen any problems yet, because they haven't had to.
Yep.
But when they do...
Well, COVID's probably the first real thing that they've experienced, right?
Yeah. Once they do see something or experience something or come up to a roadblock, they'll figure it out.
Yeah.
Because they'll have to. And
it's probably one of the things, too, about their generation is that they are so tech-savvy, where it's now like, okay, cool, so we've seen this thing that we've experienced. We've experienced hardship for the first time. what do? I can go online, I can figure it out.
Yeah.
I can do research into it. Whereas I guess the boomers of the world, they didn't have the internet to be able to do research. Just whatever happened to them at that particular point in time, they just needed to deal with it.
Can I do a little side thing about boomers online
Sure.
just now?
Yeah.
A quick 30 seconds.
Yeah.
Research the stuff that you're reading online. Okay,
Yeah.
so my Facebook is filled with boomer shared bullshit.
Yeah.
Okay, so before you share it, and plus don't share stuff that says if you don't share it, something's going to happen, because that's the algorithm is that person has created that so that you would share it for their own benefit, not yours.
Yeah.
Just do another search, not a Google search, DuckDuckGo. Everyone should download DuckDuckGo on their phones. Search on there to verify whether that is real or not.
So again, this is a generational issue, right?
Absolutely.
Because the boomers grew up with only a few main media outlets, and they were indoctrinated into this program of believing everything you heard.
Yep.
And the thing was, back when they grew up, a lot of the news was just the news.
Yeah, there was no point in...
No, there was no
agenda.
agenda.
You didn't need outrage or agenda because... Yeah.
That's right. There was no agenda. Like, they...
Oh, there was probably agenda, but not as much as now.
Well, but think about this, right? Like, they grew up at a time, like when TV was first generated, you could only watch it until 7 p.m. at night, and then they were like, thank you for watching television. We'll see you tomorrow.
Yeah.
And it was white noise.
Yeah.
Now that white noise is filled with advertising.
Yeah, that's racist. No, okay.
White noise machines, actually, I'll come back to that too.
Yeah.
But that's the thing. So they grew up in a time where television, you would have the news on there and there was no advertising.
Yeah.
Because it was just a public service announcement.
Yeah.
So they knew that what they were being told was actual, someone was actually trying to tell them the right thing.
Oh, the other one, boomers. When those ones that say, what's your date of birth is, what kind of potato are you?
Yeah.
The
No
first
one gives a shit
But
what sort of potato you
worse
are.
than that, they're stealing your identity.
Yeah.
So when they know your birthday, they now know your name.
Yeah.
They can find your address.
Yeah.
Now they can. So don't play that stuff.
Yeah.
Ask me. Text me on it. I know you're on it because you're sharing that bullshit.
Yeah.
Text me, say, is this okay first? And I'll respond.
Single boomers as well. No one is hitting you up online and saying they're in love with you straight away.
Oh, don't get catfished.
Yeah, don't get catfished.
Don't get catfished.
Do not do that.
Yeah.
Do not send your life savings to someone from overseas because
many-
they're using it to buy a plane ticket to come and see you and live with you for the rest of your life because they're not doing it.
How many Instagram bots do you get that prey on lonely men?
Oh, all the time. But like, they're even getting lazy with it too because they're like group chats.
Yeah, it's easier if I push select all.
Yeah,
as opposed to
it's the equivalent of that bloke who on Valentine's Day takes a dick pic and goes select all and spams it out.
You know who you are.
Yeah,
you know who you are.
Shout out to you.
Don't you know who you
Shout
are?
out to the fisherman.
Yeah.
But it's the
Small
equivalent of
bot.
that. So now I'm getting scamming bots, which I get sent a message request and it's a group message with stacks of blokes in it.
Okay, so
boomers. Yeah, when it comes to the internet, you need to approach the internet with a thought of whatever I'm reading is probably wrong.
Yeah.
But I'm going to research it first.
Yeah.
And I'm going to research it until I figure out whether or not it's wrong or right.
Yeah.
So approach it that it's probably wrong. It's probably fake news. Fake news is a thing now.
Yeah. It's
So-
mostly the thing.
It's mostly the thing because that's why you've clicked on the first place,
Yeah.
because it's something that is
That's what got you
sensationalized.
engaged.
That's exactly right. So that's how approach the internet that everything is probably wrong that you're reading, including this podcast. Research this shit.
Yeah. So circling back, that lack of struggle thing.
Yeah, so that's really important, and that's why it's actually pushing me to try to become a better version of myself, because I know that he's at that age now. He's watching everything I do. So one of the biggest things I've started doing, and now not working in the car industry where I'm constantly stuck to my phone, I've put the phone down. So when he's awake and I'm doing stuff with him, I'll put the phone down. Now he can find it. It's actually crazy. He'll see it and he'll just want it because he's seen me use it so many times.
Yeah.
He knows it's a valuable thing. But I put the phone down because I don't want him to be stuck in that world already. And I know heaps of parents do it where it's kids acting up. the easiest thing to do, here's a screen, because that's going to give me 15 minutes of peace and quiet. We are trying really, really hard not to do that. We've never given him a screen just to hold him over, because I know how hyper-stimulating that is. We spoke about this the other day, the social network, not social network, social dilemma. Consider all the psychology that they're using on adults in social media.
Yeah, we're falling for it.
And then you put it in front of a child who's got no experience with the world, and you think they're not going to get addicted to it, and they're going to cry next time because they want it straight away. So
I heard an interesting critique about that. I heard that on a podcast I was listening to.
be flagrant too, right?
I think it was Flagrant, where it was interviewing the people that created the technology, telling you how bad it was after they jumped out, and it was even filmed in their mansions.
Yeah. Look, I completely understand. And look, they made another interesting point too, where it's not the algorithm that's the problem, it's us that's the problem. Because the algorithm only feeds you the stuff that you're actively clicking on and seeking out in the first place.
That's another boomer tip. Hack your algorithm.
Yeah.
If you know that stuff that pisses you off and makes you angry, don't engage with it. Don't like it. Otherwise, you just keep.
So funny story on this, right? So my wife never touches the phone. She just doesn't care. Her algorithm in Facebook is broken.
Yeah.
So she showed me the other day. She logged into Facebook, and her news feed is all only advertising or people commenting into groups on like Marketplace and stuff like that. Because literally the only time that she really uses Facebook is she'll jump on Marketplace to go and try to find something she wants to buy around the house. And occasionally there might be something educational, like teaching wise or something, in some sort of teaching group that she'll interact with. But because she doesn't actually get on there and interact with like posts from her friends and stuff like that, and she's been not doing that for so long, her whole
the algorithm's like, what she likes.
Well, they think she likes advertising.
Well, the advertiser's always going to be there.
No, it's ridiculous, because it's like 5 ads in a row.
Yeah,
it's not ads interspersed between other content.
It's not that there's more ads. It's that there's less content.
There's less content.
Yeah.
Because the only thing she's been clicking on is ads, which in a way is just, her algorithm's not busted, but...
No, it is.
But it is.
It shows what happens when you don't invest in it the way they want you to invest in.
Yeah. I did like the tip that someone gave on that social dilemma, which was people who follow people they actually don't like, who have a different point of view, just to even out their algorithm a little bit. So you see, especially with things like politics and stuff like that, instead of just being stuck in that echo chamber of one side that you're on and then having that reinforced all the time. Interesting stat for you, this is sort of a side note, and this is out of actual research, not just me pulling stats out of my ass. There was a study into leadership which showed that 75% of people, when given a question or a subject to speak about, or to think about, 75% of people think differently to you do.
Okay.
So,
and they're all wrong.
yeah, all of them. But that's a real thing. So when we were talking about leadership and stuff the other week, it's one of those things that was a really big learning experience for me, because I go, how are they not seeing this? I can see this stuff clear as day. How are they not seeing this?
Yeah.
But 75% of people think differently to what you do.
Yeah.
There's only 25% of people that think the same way.
Well, I would take it. My advice is don't get political on socials. It is a dangerous place. You will not get the right news. You will not change anyone's mind if you interact with it.
Mm-hmm.
There is no benefit. If you want, because political stuff should be about you researching so you can vote for the right person.
And see, the other thing too, right? So when you think about it with the algorithms, so let's say that you are a political person on social media, and let's say you're, if we're using American terminology, say you're leftist, right? You're on the left. So there's left and the right. And let's say that there's a post up from one of your left people, and someone has gone on that post and said something inflammatory to you. that person's probably a bot. It's probably a Russian bot, or it's probably a Chinese bot, or something like that.
Or it could be a bot sponsored by a political party.
Could be. But you got to think, with the way the algorithm works, with a lot of these people getting stuck in their own echo chambers of only looking up left-wing stuff, it's highly unlikely that someone who's posting something that derogatory on something left-wing, it's actually them, a genuine person, because they're probably getting caught up in all their right-wing stuff.
And that's
at the same
why
time.
you shouldn't get involved at all.
Yeah.
There is no benefit
Yep.
except anger and frustration
Yep.
if you go down that path. Steer clear of it.
Yeah.
If
If you haven't watched The Social Dilemma, watch it. It's really interesting.
it is interesting.
It's
very interesting.
pretty alarmist, but it raises a lot of good points.
And like I said, I think you can. If you're smart about it, I think you can hack the algorithm to your advantage.
Yeah,
But you've got to be conscious of it.
you have to be conscious of it. Which, getting back to your original point, I have to, as a parent, be conscious of the fact that Nate needs to grow up knowing how privileged he is.
Yep.
At this point in time, because he is privileged, and like, let's be honest, if this is 2020 and we're talking about white privilege and all that sort of stuff, there is white privilege. That is a thing. He is a white male. That is a benefit to him already. He's going to come from a home which, my wife and I do think we are pretty intelligent people, and we're still together. That's an advantage that he's going to have. Plenty of people
Growing up in a safe area.
That's right. We're in a nice-ish neighbourhood, right? So we're in a safe area. He can go and walk the streets at night, and he'll be okay. That's a privilege. His mum's a teacher. That's going to be an advantage when it comes to school. That's a privilege. So he needs to know.
His uncle's going to get him into motorsport. That's a privilege.
And completely fund it too. You heard it here. So that's a privilege as well.
I mean, buy a car.
Completely fund it. So he needs to know that stuff. But he also needs to be able to, we need to push him in certain ways. And that's why I really can't wait to get him into sports. Because I feel like sports really did that for me. Because it's that thing of you are against opposition all the time. And you need to be able to learn to overcome things. And you need to be able to push yourself. Like we've all, played a game where it's neck and neck going into the last 5 minutes of the game and you're wrecked because it's been so physical. And it's your will versus theirs, and it pushes you to that next level.
How to dig deep.
That's right. Because I do feel like this day and age, one of the things with our generation is a lot of that, because a lot of us are gamers. And look, my wife doesn't want to play video games at all. I think you can play some video games because there's some real benefits to playing video games, right? But you need to have that balance.
Well, now, like the esports guys, it's not. Like they have training camps.
Yep.
Like what regular athletes have.
Absolutely. Yeah. Because
So
I know
they realise
the diet's on point.
Yeah. The
because
physicality.
Exactly. Because your brain's not going to work as quickly if your body's not in the right physical shape. So again, that mentality's different these days too. So you can do a bit of that stuff, but I mean, look, I'll give you an example of what I'm talking about. So the problem with video games in my mind is that with every video game, if you die in the game, you just restart and you go again. So the consequence isn't really there. And we grew up playing some video games as well, but obviously played a lot of sports too, so I had that balance between the two. But I'll always remember the first time I really realised what the real world was like when I first went for my driver's license. So I went for my driver's license the first day that I possibly could, and I failed on my first attempt. And it was for something that I feel was hard done by, but whatever. I failed on the first attempt.
75% of people think you're wrong.
Probably.
Yeah.
And that was one of those things where, coming from a small town, you could only do the driving test once a month. So I had to wait a month before I could go again. And it was like, it did make sense in my head because I had played some video games. So I had failed. So you just hit restart and you go again. But now I had to wait a month. And that was a bit of an eye-opening experience for me. And I think that's one of the things with video games that is an issue with kids is, there's some struggle in video games because you'll be playing against people who are better than you. You can put up to a harder difficulty or whatever. But at the end of the day, if you fail in that video game, you can just hit restart and you can go again. And instantly. Whereas a lot of times in life, you don't get the opportunity to just hit restart and go again. And I think that's why sports are such a good thing too, because you might have a team sport where it's over a whole season, and you can lose a couple of games along the way, but then once you get to the finals, if you get into the finals, then it's a higher stakes game, and it's sort of, then you learn those experiences too.
I think that you have got the opportunity to restart, and I think that one of the problems that we have is that I think there's a lot of pressure on people that you've got one crack at it, you've got one life.
Mm-hmm.
But I know in business, like all the most successful people in the world, they failed and failed. They
For sure.
in a virtual term, like they died
Mm-hmm. Yep.
countless times before they succeeded.
Yeah.
So I don't buy into the fact that if you that you can't make mistakes or that you can't.
No, but I think you need to understand that if you do fail, you don't just hit the restart button and you're instantly back where you were before. It's when you fail, you sort of go below zero, and then you get yourself back up again. And you need to be able to have that resilience built in you, where you understand, all right, I failed this time around, I can get back there, but I need to put the work in.
Well, I don't see it as going back. I say when you die, you've got to raise, because that level didn't work.
Yeah, okay.
So you need to improve again. And if that level won't work, because there's other people out there that are trying harder than you, doing it better than you, and that lifts you.
Which I think for kids, sports is one of the best ways
Yep.
to foster that. Because I knew it. So when I was a kid, I was very good at sports, and I was a bit of a jack of all trades. I could do anything. But I would always find it with primary school athletics. So I'd always win the discus, I'd always win the shot put. I wasn't the fastest runner or anything like that, but I had some events that I did really, really, really well in. Then you went sent to districts. Holy shit, then you get put in your place. And sometimes you would try really, really hard and you get through districts, then you go to regionals. And then all of a sudden you realise, holy shit, I'm not at that level, because I was a big fish in a small pond coming from a small school. It's a humbling experience. And I think, being humbled is really important for all of us. It's one of the things about martial arts, which I think is a really interesting thing, where a lot of people who don't know a lot about martial arts are adverse to getting kids to do martial arts, because they're like, oh, you're just going to teach them to fight and it's going to make the problem worse.
Oh, I hate that.
It's such a bad mentality.
It's the same as driver training. Parents don't want their kids driver training because they don't want their kids to see what you can do in a car.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Dumb.
It's so dumb.
That's dumb.
Yeah, because that's...
Do you want... It's like saying, I don't want my brain surgeon taught what happens when it goes wrong.
Yeah.
I just...
Because otherwise they're just going to do that.
Yeah. That's so dumb.
Yeah. So, anyway. Let's move on to the next one.
Okay, so... What corporate skills do you think you could apply from fatherhood?
So, as in, what skills do I take from the corporate arena into fatherhood?
No, the other way around. If you were to go back in, what has fatherhood taught you that you didn't know before, that you'd bring into business?
The number one thing, patience. My patience has gone to the next level.
Okay.
Because, again, when you're a hard-charging, high-achieving, goal-oriented guy, like I was am still, but was for such a long time, especially in my career, patience is always a problem for me. I thought I was a patient guy. I wasn't. I was always just trying to push, always trying to get to the next level. Whereas, again, with Nate, you've got to be patient. You've just you've just got no choice. Because if you're not patient, you're just going to implode.
Yeah.
Right? So, I reckon that's probably the number one thing would be, patience.
There you go. That's everything that I had written down.
Well, probably the other thing too that I've taken from becoming a father is it's really put in, and look, it's probably been mixed in with being able to spend more time at home because of COVID and stuff like that. It really had put in perspective for me what's actually important to me in life. Because again, being that hard charging guy, you've often got blinders on. You're not looking at everything else that's happening, right? Because you've just got tunnel vision on the goal. And I got to a point where I was tunnel vision on the month and tunnel vision on that. And I was always thinking in my mind that, okay, when I get to the end of that month and I achieve my goals, that'll be awesome. And you sort of think there's going to be something, that you're going to feel good, or there's going to be some positive thing at the end of that. That's right. And then you get to the end of it, and guess what? You start again.
Back again.
You're back again.
Yeah.
And then I just got to a point where, like, I was probably pretty blind to it when I was doing it every day, because that's what the job is. But then pulling myself out of that environment, it's made me go, I've missed so much life in the last 10 years of being caught up in that environment, where if I did go back to, even if I went back to the motor industry, I wouldn't allow it to take over my life like I have done before, because it definitely did.
Or your team's life.
Or my team's life. And again, that's unfortunately one of the things that you see perpetuated throughout people's careers is, young people come into a system where it is just that grinding, like they just get ground down by the management. And like there's that pressure to not take RDOs, and that pressure to show up early, and that pressure to stay late, and it just gets ingrained into them. And then there's all that extra life they miss because of that. And then they get promoted. And that's the way they know how to do it. So they grind it into the next person. Like there is a lot of life out there that you miss out on when you're
At what cost is what I say. At what cost?
That's right.
You spending that extra time at work, is it the cost of time at home?
Yeah.
And it's up to you to say whether it's worth that or
Yeah,
not.
and as a workplace, like you need to encourage people to take that time for themselves. Like
Netflix policy, unlimited holidays.
Yeah.
You can take holidays whenever you want.
Yep.
And the CEO, I can't remember his name, he's going around trying to teach other CEOs the lessons that he's learned. It's still in place now.
Yeah.
And they get massive benefits.
Again, it just gets back to that thing of it's quality of life and becoming an employer of choice.
Yeah.
Like you are going to get the best people to apply for your organisation if they know that's what the perks are.
Yeah.
And guess what? Those best people that you pick, they're not going to abuse the system.
No, they don't.
They're going to take a fair amount of breaks.
That was the first problem that he saw in it, is that when he implemented that at Netflix, no one took any holidays because they thought it was a trap. So the CEO had to take holidays. He did it himself, and then he's like, "It's fine. Like, come on, do it."
Yeah. And I think that's a big thing for me too. Is that if I did, or when I do go back to either working or whatever it is that I do next, not letting that consume me and take over life, because I'm missing a lot of life at the same time, and that's not fair on the family.
No.
Because one of the things that as soon as you have kids, it's not about me anymore.
No.
Like it is to a degree, and I've still got to live, and I've still got to have my own life, and I'm not a martyr.
Yeah.
But I can make choices. Nate can't at this point in time. So I've got to make the right choices for him at this point.
Cool. Thank you very much for tuning in.
Yeah.
Please push the like button. Want to see some more likes? Want to see some more subscribes?
Yeah.
Share it around. Yeah. If there's anyone that think would benefit from hearing what the bullshit that we've got to say.
Yeah, help us out. Like, share, subscribe. Those are the main things for us.
Yeah.
But look, at the end of the day, like we do really enjoy doing this, and we hope that you guys really enjoy it. We do still have some audio equipment coming too, so pretty soon it's going to be we're going to ramp it up to that next level and be able to actually have it available on the audio platforms, that sort of thing as well, which will hopefully make it easy for you out there. But look, as always, guys, thank you very much for joining us, and we'll see you next RDO.